Do you want to learn how to shoot Facebook ads that generate hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue using just your iPhone? After analyzing thousands of ads across multiple industries and hundreds of ad accounts, I found something shocking. Over 91% of our best performing ads, the ones that are generating six figures in revenue, were shot on iPhones. Not on expensive gear, not in professional studios, and after testing out this across $15 million in monthly ad spend, I can finally reveal why. My name is Alessio, and at 99ads.com we've discovered that the secret to high converting ads isn't about the equipment. It's about understanding exactly what makes people stop scrolling and pull out their credit card. Most advertisers focus on the wrong thing, making their ads look perfect, but our data shows that authenticity outperforms production value every single time. In this video, I'm going to show you our exact framework for creating scroll-stopping ads using just your iPhone. The same framework that's helped our clients generate consistent six-figure returns from their ads. This isn't about theory. You'll see exactly how we shoot, edit, and structure these ads for maximum performance. You're not gonna need any expensive gear, no red cameras, no fancy crews. Let's get started.
Module 1, Chapter 1, Building Your Own Stock Footage Library. This is gonna be an interesting module as I'm gonna lay out all of the overarching principles we should keep in mind while shooting content for our ad creatives. Now, listen up. At the end of the day, shooting for performance means creating your own stock footage library of scenes. Think of libraries like Envato, Storyblocks, Shutterstock. Well, you want to create your own. Building your own stock footage library is the end result of our shootings. Once we start thinking in terms of performance, that's exactly what we want. But wait, isn't this course about shooting content? Why are we talking about stock footage libraries? Well, if that's your question, when it comes to explaining concepts, I find it much easier for people to understand whatever concept I'm explaining when I use metaphors. In this case, the stock footage library almost turned creating ads and creating content into a fun game for our team members. And this is the way I would like you to see ads. Look, shooting ads individually is not exactly what we do most of the time. I'm not sure if you've ever been in a Hollywood level production set, but one thing is shooting a movie. You literally have months, if not years, at your disposal. You have a massive amount of money at your disposal, and you have as many professionals as you need at your disposal. Think of film directors, directors of photography, makeup artists, audio engineers, and much more. When it comes to ads, we are playing a completely different game. We don't have all the budget in the world. We don't have all the people in the world. And most importantly, we don't have time. We are constantly fighting against time because the sooner the ad goes live, the sooner we know if what we're shooting even makes sense. Obviously, I'm overgeneralizing. However, I want you to see this massive difference. On top of that, we will talk about this in depth in a later chapter, but we produced, edited, and analyzed countless ads. And I can guarantee that you can find no Hollywood level movies in the top 1% of the ads. So what we do is we shoot for performance and we leave Hollywood to other people. Now, how do we shoot for performance? What does that even mean? It means that we shoot scenes that we can add to our stock footage library. And that stock footage library is what we have access to day in and day out to build new winning ads, which, by the way, is also the end result of shooting content. We don't shoot content just for the sake of shooting content, but we do it so we can find new winning ads on command, hopefully. Building our stock footage library means that we want to brief and shoot our scenes in order to get as many high quality video blocks as possible. And of course, we also want to test out scripted ideas, but we will get into details on this topic in the next chapter. Once we have our best performing formulas, we fit the scenes we shoot within the formulas that perform best for our brand, and we test it out. As simple as that. Everything clear? Hopefully it is. If not, keep in mind that you can get back to this chapter anytime you want and get a better grasp of it. This is performance, and this is one of the key concepts to understand this course. We have different categories of scenes, and we want to make sure that we build our own stock footage library as soon as possible, getting at our disposal as many scenes as we can. Whether we are briefing or shooting, we constantly want to keep in mind that each scene needs a main character, and that we have to pick it based on the 3P triangle, which stands for product, persona, and problem. Then we also want to keep in mind the 7 core concepts that we have at our disposal. It doesn't matter what formula we will end up using, the concept will be one of the following: old way versus new way, demonstration, transformation, storytelling, social proof, thought-provoking questions, in platform trends. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about the categories of shots that we have at our disposal. Initially, I thought I could just include the categories to this video, but then I realized that it would get obsolete quickly and that it would be much better to have all the categories listed in an external worksheet and keep that updated all the time. We constantly try to perfect our system, and if you have bought this course, I want you to have access to our latest changes. In the worksheet attached, you will find most of the categories we use, and it's important to understand that you won't need all of those scenes for all of the products. Depending on what you're promoting, you will find some of the scenes working better than others, and that is what you want to double down on. You find something that works, you shoot more of that, you analyze the new data, you keep creating more winning ads from the high-performing scenes, and shoot more of what works. As usual, base all your decisions on actual data. The more biased you are, the less precise your tests will be, and the longer it will take you to start shooting winning content on demand. Now, the next big part of building our stock footage library comes down to organizing the content. And this is where you win the performance battle. You can have thousands of shots at your disposal, but if they're not well organized, you end up not using them, and even worse, you're gonna end up forgetting about using some clear winners. The platform we use to organize our content is called Iconic. And on the post-production module, I will show you how we structure our folders on Iconic. That being said, you don't need to use Iconic. That's the one we prefer, but we work on many projects simultaneously. If you're working on a single project, you might want to test out other options. Iconic is one of the most expensive, and you can work with much cheaper options. If you are starting out, even a good old Google Drive folder can do the trick. Anyhow, the goal is quite simple. You want all the scenes to be labeled and organized in order for your creative strategists and video editors to tap into each category every time they want. So we shoot the content and we label all the scenes into each category. Then we start testing, and the next thing we do is labeling all the winning scenes. Each and every one of these winning scenes becomes an asset for our performance department. And not only will we be able to use them to create new ads, but we will also be able to reshoot similar scenes, knowing how and what works about them. Having your own library and understanding exactly what works on your audience is the dream for all the advertisers and all the business owners. And this is the end result of shooting for performance. You want to get to that stage as soon as possible, then keep on building up and up on that. Some of our clients have been using winning scenes literally for years. and they will keep using them for more years to come. Putting a number on the return on investment of those winning scenes is a hard task to accomplish, but we can easily think of thousands of times. So, to recap this chapter, performance is formulated, and you constantly want to find new winning pieces to your stock footage library. Then you want to organize all of the scenes in a practical way and make sure that they're always available for your creative strategists and video editor. Finally, you want to label all your winners and constantly find new ways to keep squeezing them for as long as you can. This is the end of the chapter. Hope you got a good grasp of this key principle. If not, feel free to rewind and go through it again. In the next chapter, we will be talking about what makes the performance pros win and why it feels like they know exactly what they're doing when it's not necessarily the case. See you there. Alrighty, performance is formulated. In this chapter, we dive into an incredible topic that allowed us to bring our service to the next level. So, grab your favorite snack, sit back, and let's unravel the secrets to shooting content for performance. This concept will be one of the main takeaways of this course. Lots of people talk about the creative and artistic aspect of shooting content for performance, which is great, and I believe it is totally normal for it to be expected. However, the sooner you understand it's more science than art, the sooner you're going to start printing money either for your company or for your clients. And trust me, we had to learn this the hard way. In the last 12 months alone, over $100 million have been spent on the ads we delivered. This was a phenomenal milestone for us, and getting there was no walk in the park. Getting to this level took a long time, and most importantly, a lot of mistakes that I want you to avoid. One of the biggest bottlenecks we struggled with was getting wildly different results among clients. Some clients were getting amazing results. Other clients were getting meh results. And of course, when it comes to ad creatives, you are never in control of all of the variables. But since we only work with big spenders, most of the variables tend to be nailed down. I'm talking about the market fit, the price, the brand, and so on. Back then, we had this one creative strategist who was outperforming all of the other ones by far. So after thinking about each and every solution I could think of, I did the simplest thing. Just ask him, what are you doing? Why are you so much better than others that have so much more experience than you? And his answer was the following: I don't know what they're doing, but this is not rocket science. What I'm doing is simply plug and playing scenes into these formulas. Some formulas perform better than others on different clients, but this is it. You don't really need to reinvent the wheel. It's just about finding as many winning shots as possible and then mix and matching them. This answer left me speechless, since I was the one pushing for artistic shots, well thought out angles, and hard to remember storylines. But that's when everything changed for us. The bottom line is, performance is formulated. Keep it simple, stupid. Understand what formula performs best for your company and double down by finding new winning scenes to plug and play. What are our go-to formulas, you might be asking? Well, there are many formulas, and you can let your creativity kick in to create your own. If you are watching this video, you probably read about our GBP method. It stands for gut, brain, pocket. And that's one of the main ones that we use at 99 Ads. If you haven't read the GBP method, let us know and we will provide you with a copy. Another incredibly powerful formula is the PAS, which stands for Problem, Agitate, Solution. This formula comes from the copywriting world and has been formulated by Eugene Schwartz, author of Breakthrough Advertising, in which He explains that first you want to show the problem, then agitate your prospect and make it urgent for them to find a solution, and finally present that solution yourself. Another favorite one of mine is the AIDA, which stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. I personally find it to be a little outdated for online advertising, but it still works like a charm for certain industries. If you want to find more, you can find all the formulas we use at 99ads.com/formulas. So now let's put all of this into practice, and I'm gonna show you how you can apply this to shooting content for performance. If the chapter finished here, it could sound more like a post-production type of lesson, as in you want to stitch together and edit your scenes based on these formulas. However, we want to take all this into account also while preparing the briefs so that the scenes we shoot can fit the formulas from the get-go. At the beginning of our journey, another big mistake we made was that we used to exclusively shoot scripted ads. Imagine coming up with an ad idea, creating a storyboard for that specific ad, and shooting each and every scene according to that storyboard. Sometimes you can strike gold, of course, but more often than not, you end up with scenes that you can't really use anywhere else. Although I would recommend shooting scripts for a handful of brand new concepts per month, I would highly recommend maintaining a healthy ratio between scripted ads and new scenes that you can add to your stock footage library. The main difference is that you don't get many chances at making your script perform. It either works or it doesn't work. And although many ideas sound genius to us during the pre-production phase, sometimes the market tells us the opposite. On the other hand, you can use and reuse scenes that are part of your stock footage library as many times as you want. So let's say you are going for the PAS, the Problem, Agitate, Solution formula, and that's the one that works best for your store. If I was you, it would make a lot of sense to put in your brief scenes categories such as problem, agitate, and solution. So when you brief your shootings, you think in terms of these three macro categories in scenes that you can mix and match rather than thinking in terms of individual ads. So you will have your list of problems and you will shoot a bunch of them. You will have your list of agitates and you will shoot a bunch of them. Finally, you will have your list of solutions and you will shoot a bunch of them. Look at these three categories as pieces of the same puzzle that fit together. Once you test them out, you can mix the best performing problems with the best performing agitate and the best performing solutions. And think of how many variations you can come up with a single shooting. So we want to shoot some brand new concepts every single month, but I would recommend allocating at least 70% plus of our shootings to scenes that we can use and reuse multiple times. You can also do this not only with scenes that you will take in the future, but also with scenes that you took in the past. Just go back to your content library, relabel all your content based on the use you can make of it, and this is how you think in terms of performance. This is an incredible concept that completely changed the way we shoot content. In the next chapter, we're gonna talk about volume and why I truly believe that performance equals volume. Let's go. Performance equals volume. This is the third key principle I want you to take away from this course. And if you get this right, you will be able to dominate the performance field. Before we start, I want one thing to be clear. In the last 24 months, I've personally talked to some of the biggest experts in the field, as well as some of the highest paid operators that work in the biggest companies in the industry. Hear me out. Nobody Nobody has cracked the code. And when I say nobody, I mean nobody. First things first, the code we're trying to crack is constantly changing. We advertise on some of the fastest platforms that ever existed. The game is constantly changing, and whoever comes to you saying that they can guarantee they can shoot high performing ads on the first take, they're simply trying to scam you. Nobody can guarantee that. Now, based on the amount of data available on your ad account, we can definitely get a relatively high chance to get winning ads and winning scenes from day one. But that's not about the content you shoot. That's about the data you have at your disposal and how you analyze it. So when you hear about big brands that are spending $100,000 plus a day, what makes them stand out and get incredible results is the volume of tests they run and how impeccable they are at analyzing and processing the results they get from those tests. That's the game. It's fun to see all the X accounts talking a big game and how good they are at finding winners, coming up with new concepts, and so on. This principle applies to them too. Probably even more considering how much they have to tweet to compensate for insecurities. Jokes aside, those who win at performance, how do they win? The biggest variable that we cannot ignore is the business itself. One thing is having great ads, and one thing is having a great business. Those who win have both. You can tell a great business based on how much they can spend to acquire a new customer. The more they can spend comfortably to acquire a new customer, the more they can scale their campaigns and conquer the market. Some of the biggest players I worked with are extremely comfortable scaling their campaigns to insane numbers while being slightly profitable or even at a small loss. They have their numbers nailed down and they understand to the T metrics like time to second purchase, AOV, average order value on second purchase, and repeat customer rate. They know you will come back and they're comfortable with it. You can run the best ads in the game, but if you have somebody like this against you, good luck. That being said, the other big variable, and this is what we're working on right now, is ad creatives. And that's what we want to focus on in this course. Those who win are those who test the most and learn the most. I talked to some great brands that are doing an amazing job when it comes to ad creatives, data analysis, and quality of iterations. And what they're doing sometimes is much better than what bigger companies that spend much more money on advertising per day are doing. However, that's not enough. Why? Because performance is about volume. One of the biggest mistakes small brand owners make when it comes to performance is perfectionism. Perfectionism kills performance. Performance needs volume. Performance needs fast execution. Performance needs real data. The only way for you to get real data is through volume. If your team needs weeks and weeks to approve some talents and they expect talents to be absolutely perfect and to be the absolute right fit, even before starting to shoot, you lost the war. By the time you approve your talents, if your competitor works with us, they have shot, edited, and launched at least 50 new ads, and they know exactly what is gonna be their next step, data in hand. Performance is messy. Embrace messy and thank us later. Some of the winners you will find will make absolutely no sense, and you will have to be cool with that. I lost count of how many ads with typos, editing mistakes, and talents who had zero facial expressions turned out to be gold mines for our clients. You can't analyze and predict everything. Part of performance is just magic. And speaking of analysis, another performance trap is the analysis paralysis. As time goes by, you will get access to an incredible amount of data, and using all of it all the time will become extremely tempting. You don't want to fall into that trap. You analyze the results and make your assumptions, then test them out to gather actual data. As easy as that. And I guess what you're gonna tell me is that it's easy to do this and focus on testing volume when you're spending up to 6 figures a day in ads. And I believe that's a fair point. However, don't confuse cause and effect. You get to spend up to 6 figures a day by understanding performance and testing volume. When your budget is low, you still want to think in terms of performance and testing volume. Actually, it becomes even more important if you are not spending as much. The crucial aspect of it is being extremely aware of each and every test you're running. You want to be clear on what information you expect to get from that specific test. Look at the data, make your assumptions and hypotheses, then see what the market has to say about them. Since your budget will be limited, you will have less shots to take. Then just make sure they're the ones that can bring the biggest impact. If you understand how to create ads and then outtest and outlearn your competitors, then this course will be worth it. I'll see you in the next chapter, in which we will be talking about shooting for performance and what are the differences in terms of production with everything else you've heard about. Let's go. Shooting for performance. This is also the title of the course, so you can imagine how important this chapter is gonna be. My intention with each and every module of this course was to make them so that each module could be more than worth the price of the course based on the results you would get by implementing everything you've been told. So far, we talked about 3 key concepts that by default will improve your performance and change the way you look at shooting content for your ad creatives. Now, in this chapter, we will be talking about the most important differences between Hollywood level production and shooting for performance. These two worlds could not be more different. And unfortunately, when you think of shooting content for a brand, Hollywood is what almost everybody sets as some sort of self-imposed expectation. However, last time that I checked, we were not trying to get people to sit on a chair for 2 hours straight, but we were trying to get them to buy something. At 99 Ads, we do offer done-for-you performance shootings, and during the sales process, we have to sit down with the client and make sure they understand what they need, not what they want, what they need. I believe this chapter will be incredibly helpful since 90% of the time clients believe that the reason why they're not getting sales is because they don't have Hollywood models wearing their clothes in front of a red camera and a full 12-person production crew. That's not what they're lacking. What they're lacking is understanding performance. And again, we learned this the hard way. Let me give you a little bit of a story time. Once we tested pretty much all the solutions we could, we realized that we had to put together our own production crew and take the bull by the horns. In the pre-production module, I will get into details on everything we tested before making this decision. It's gonna be a long story and I'm sure you will find a lot of value. That being said, for now, let's focus on the production crew and all the mistakes we made at the very beginning. First things first, we overthought every single aspect of it. And this is why I'm recording this course. The expected solution for everybody is such a complicated one, and if you can walk away from this course understanding what is the 20% of effort that brings the 80% of results, then I'm happy with it. Initially, we talked to model agencies and tested some of the best ones in the world. This might slightly change based on the product you're selling and the industry you're in, but overall, people are constantly bombarded with ads. They see ads on TV, they see ads on billboards, they see ads while working, they see ads while waiting for their Uber. After producing, editing, and analyze countless winning ads, we came to the conclusion that if it looks like an ad, most likely it's not going to perform on social media platforms. 99% of the time, the runway model with impeccable makeup is not going to perform. 99% of the time, the jacked dude with incredible abs and big arms is not gonna perform. People need relatability. And it's incredibly hard to relate to runway models and jacked dudes. As a rule of thumb, when we cast talents for our shootings, we want the talents to be as close as possible to the person who's going to buy our products. Are we selling a workout program? The slightly overweight man who struggles going up the stairs will outperform the jacked dude every day of the week. Are we selling some skincare products? The 53-year-old lady with some skin imperfections who shows the before and after of her experience with our product will outperform the runway model with impeccable skin every day of the week. So imagine how painful of a lesson it was for us to find out that we were spending thousands of dollars per day per actor to then find out that our neighbor could have been a much better talent. And I think this is a decent segue to my next point. Authenticity is much more important than we think. And we can go in two directions with this point. Right after model agencies, we went to acting schools. Our production crew loved working with actors and acting students because they were so easy to work with. They would just understand the script and go for it. However, authenticity was not there. Watching the footage afterwards, they were almost too good to be relatable. And performance showed us that was the case. The other direction we can go when it comes to authenticity is related to the equipment. For our first shootings, we rented a $50,000 RED camera. If you never heard of it, this is the type of camera they use to shoot Netflix documentaries. I cannot tell you how stupid of a decision that was. First of all, managing content that's that heavy makes every small operation a nightmare. Just uploading it on Iconic took way longer than usual, and video editors were constantly complaining about how long it took to export their videos. Moreover, social media platforms would compress everything either way, so where's the point? Then we moved to DSLR cameras on 4K. And that was slightly better. However, once you start getting a proper content library, working on 4K takes much longer than simply 1080p. Not to mention all the time spent on manual settings to make sure that all the shots were consistent, same light, same exposure. Eventually, we ended up sticking to iPhones. Year after year, iPhone cameras are becoming better and better, especially if we're shooting for social media. But on top of that, we get back to my previous point. RED quality footage makes our ads look like ads. And remember, if it looks like an ad, it's not gonna perform. The RED camera, the runway model, and the jack dude make your ego happy as a brand owner, but they don't make your bank account grow. Lower quality gives a bit of authenticity, and that's what performs. Shooting for performance is a form of art in and of itself, and we don't need to make it even more complicated. If you like shooting documentaries, cool, do that. But if you want to shoot ads to perform, this is how you do it. Finally, you want to come to terms with speed over quality. Shooting for performance is not as exciting as it sounds. It's a very results-driven process, and you constantly want to keep in mind your North Star, which is conversions. Our creative strategists and video editors are allowed to shoot content in their living room if they're missing some shot that they would like to test out but would take too long to shoot with our production crew. If we are talking performance, we choose speed over quality every day of the week. Obviously, it doesn't have to be either or, but if you have to choose, lean towards speed. Remember that the faster you gather data on an idea or hypothesis you have, the faster you will see results and the sooner you will be able to double down on it. Performance is all about data, and if you want to win, you've got to make sure that you get more data than your competitors and you do it faster. This is it for Module 1. In the next module, we will talk about pre-production and how to start putting into practice everything you learned on this module. I'll see you there. Welcome to Module 2 of the course Shooting for Performance. To recap, the structure of this course is straightforward. We have started with some of the principles we need to learn before starting to shoot for performance. Now, we will be moving on to the meat of the course. If this is the first time you approach production, you want to split everything you do into 3 parts: pre-production, production, and post-production. Pre-production is everything you do before the shooting. Everything that you do before the moment you or your videographer hit rec. And that's when it becomes production. This module will be entirely dedicated to pre-production. We stole this structure from film production, and obviously we don't need older steps to get the job done. Pre-production is all the planning, preparation, and execution that happens before the shooting. At 99 Ads, we mainly focus on briefing, budgeting, casting, location scouting, product preparation, and final touches, in this order. It goes without saying that we didn't start with this structure. Actually, our first ever shooting was a bit of a shit show. It was outside. We needed to shoot a few scenes at sunrise, so we showed up at the location at 6 a.m. and the sunrise was at 7:30 a.m. So we literally spent 90 minutes just waiting in the cold. Then the sunrise started, but the public lights didn't turn off. So we had to run to another spot without public lights. Not funny. And after that, we had somewhat of a smooth shooting until we got to the sun bites. We literally got all the noises you can imagine on tape. People walking their dog, people running, people cycling, people laughing, and people screaming. Then we realized that we were 5 minutes away from the airport and all the tapes had some sort of an airplane noise in the background. I could go on and on. Everything you will learn on this module is how to avoid all these problems and show up as a professional team in front of the talents. Everything is taken care of. There's not much figuring out during the shooting, and talents feel pampered through the entire day. Each team member is on a mission, knows exactly what to do and how to do it. And at the end of the module, I will share with you a checklist you can use before your shootings so you know where you are in terms of preparation and know what you're missing. So let's move on to the next chapter. In this chapter, we will be talking about the different types of production. I am also going to tell you why I believe in the 99 ads approach when it comes to shooting for performance.
We can bring this conversation in different directions, but let's start by listing the available options and break them down based on our experience. Just to clarify, we have tested all of them at length, and they all have their own space in a long-term winning strategy. You got AI platforms, UGC creators that are split in 3 levels, freelance platforms, UGC platforms, and freelance. Then you have agency like 99 ads, and you have shooting in-house. Let's start from AI platforms. AI platforms are the new thing all over the internet. There's a lot of money and hype behind them, but they simply don't produce the content we need. We tested all the AI platforms out there, and we also invested a large amount of money in developing our own AI solution. The truth is, when it comes to content production, we are nowhere near the level we need to actually produce winning content with AI. The time is gonna come, and I'm genuinely excited about it, but we're not there yet. If we talk about platforms like AdCreative.ai that generate hundreds of ads in a couple of minutes, that's not what I'm looking for. When it comes to the end result, we always choose quality over quantity. And these platforms have to deliver quantity to look appealing, at least for now. My personal opinion is that we are not there yet. Moving on to the UGC creators. If you go on Twitter and read all the most popular threads on the topic, it sounds like that most brands are mainly focused on building a roster of UGC creators and getting them on a monthly retainer. I pay you X and every month you deliver Y pieces of content. I give you no instructions, might share with you some data on what has worked last time, but that's it. You go and you figure it out. Although there are some incredibly talented creators out there, that's not what we refer to as performance. If you want to find new winning shots and add them to your own stock footage library predictably every month, you cannot rely exclusively on talent's creativity. That is not long-term thinking, and it won't serve you as much. Talents have their own role within the content creation strategy, but they need to be directed for maximum performance. That direction must be based on data. On top of that, if UGC creators are working alone, it will be hard for them to compete with a full production team that knows exactly what they're doing. That being said, we have 3 main sources of UGC creators. The first one is freelance platforms. I'm pretty sure you've heard of platforms like Fiverr and Upwork, and those are some good sources of UGC creators. You find your favorite one, get a quote, and ship your products relatively fast. We tested plenty of them, and the overall experience is not bad at all. Among the pros, we have speed, since it takes you literally a few minutes to find a bunch of UGC creators, and you can definitely save a lot of time. If you hire the UGC creator within the platform, you also get quite a lot of perks as a client, and creators are motivated to deliver something good, or they put their platform reputation on the line. Overall, that's quite a good option. Then the second one is UGC platforms. Some of our favorites are Billo and Influee. Several pros, once again, speed is absolutely amazing. You can find tens of creators that are ready to start shooting in just a couple of minutes. I like these platforms also because if you spend bigger amounts, you get in-depth reviews of the creator's previous work, as well as also you can get some help to find the best fit for your brand. This is particularly important if you're running ads in multiple countries and want to localize your content. The third option is UGC creators who work on their own personal brand as UGC creators, in fact. These ones tend to be the ones I like the most. And they're constantly motivated to deliver better and better content, and they put their reputation on the line all the time. Now,
UGC creators do also have some downsides that I want you to consider. The first one is that the good UGC creators tend to burn quite fast, whereas by burn, I mean that if their face is on too many brands, especially if big brands, their videos lose authenticity. Do you remember one of our principles? If it looks like an ad, it's not gonna convert. The more brands your creator has promoted in their career, the more your ads will look like ads. The second problem I'm not a huge fan of is that each creator tends to develop their own style, and it's hard to get rid of it if it doesn't fit your brand. Moreover, if you truly start understanding performance, you need a blank canvas to validate your hypothesis. And if you have to take into account more variables such as the creator style, then it might defeat the purpose of the test. And finally, logistics. Logistics are an absolute nightmare. Multiple creators mean multiple people to manage, multiple shipments, endless products to keep track of, especially if your store has multiple SKUs. On top of that, communication is time consuming and you pretty much need at least a full-time person to manage all these relationships. Another aspect that tends to be overlooked is that each creator has access to different equipment, location, video skills, and it becomes incredibly hard to mix and match all of the scenes at a later stage. This is why we still have a database of remote creators, but we rely on them for around 5% of all the content we produce. And then you have agencies. You have agencies of all sizes, from the freelance with a couple of assistants to the massive studio in Hollywood. And to clarify, 99 Ads falls under this category. I personally believe this is one of the best options if you work with actual professionals. I need to emphasize if you work with actual professionals because new production agencies are constantly popping out and a large part of them are not good enough. We get numerous requests every single month from people who got burned by the latest quote-unquote agency. Anyhow, there are some real professionals out there, and if you're lucky enough to stumble upon one of them, here are some of the reasons why you might want to consider agencies as your best choice. You have a team of professionals who are constantly updated on the latest trends and put in all their experience to grow your brand. To give a benchmark, over $100 million have been spent on our ads in the last 12 months alone. Imagine how much data we could leverage to find winners for anyone. The second reason why you might want to consider agencies as a great option is that you have one single point of contact who walks you through a process that has been designed to maximize your experience and provide you with the best results possible. You will be working with one vendor, so you will be shipping your products just once. The same crew will be able to take your videos. They will also be the ones to monitor, analyze, and process the data. So you can imagine how real is the compound effect. There would be much more to talk about, but there are two big problems that would make an agency like 99 Ads not a fit for everybody. The pricing structure. First of all, we charge a base fee plus a percentage of the ad spend of all the winning ads we deliver. Only stores that are spending a minimum amount qualify, and this is definitely not for everybody. Both because it ends up being very expensive based on performance, and also because only around 10% of the stores we talk to qualify. The second reason why it might not be a good decision for you is the wait list. We cannot work with an endless amount of clients if we want to deliver the best service in the industry. So do most of the best agencies out there. Sometimes, even if you qualify, you can't get started simply because there's no client slot available. So in light of these, what is the best option? What am I recommending? Let me introduce you to shooting in-house. Once you understand how to shoot for performance, you can decide to shoot your own content in-house. This is what we will be working on through this course, and I will be showing you both how to shoot content yourself and how to build your own production crew for a tiny fraction of what you would be paying an agency like 99 ads. You will get all the pros mentioned above without the cons. I will walk you through how to do everything in the most effective and efficient way possible so that you can fix the production problem once and for all and finally focus on growing your store. This is something that we came up with after testing literally everything, and I'm absolutely sure it will be a game changer for you. So in the next chapter, we will be starting from the briefs. And the performance briefs are absolutely the most important part of the pre-production because everything starts from there. So without further ado, I'll see you there. Let's talk about briefs and performance briefing. Buckle up, because if you get the briefing right, then 50% of the job is done. Before we start, here's a small disclaimer for you. This course is based on all the things we learned on the field, and I would never feel comfortable telling you to do something that we did not experiment firsthand. The briefing is one of those dynamic parts of the engine that are constantly changing and improving. So this is how we do it today, and we are pretty happy with it. It's a sustainable approach, we get results, and most importantly, clients get results. That being said, if tomorrow we happen to find another better approach, I would upload a video update letting you know what we changed and why we changed it. Good thing about purchasing the Shooting for Performance course is that you get access to all the updates for free straight into your inbox. We are committed to constantly finding the best solutions for our clients, and we could not be happier to share them with you. Now, as usual, some good old story time. First shooting took us 14 hours from start to finish. Talents were absolutely destroyed. Our crew was absolutely destroyed. And we kept shooting just because we had to. Towards the second part of the day, there was no more attention to details, and it was all about going through all the scenes and checking them off as fast as possible. What was the result? We got back to the office with a huge amount of scenes that we could not use. The only good ones were the ones we had shot in the morning, but it resulted in a big loss for our production crew. We thought our briefing was decent, and we paid so much attention to making sure that each and every script was worded correctly based on the previous results. Fast forward to today, we were doing everything wrong. And the briefing was decent for the post-production team, but it was just a nightmare for the production crew. As advertisers, we tend to be very analytical and make decisions that are exclusively based on data. And that's what makes us love our job, and also what makes us stand out. However, if we want to be able to shoot content, we need to adopt the right strategy in order for the production crew to be able to deliver some amazing results. Shooting to the script is the perfect representation of advertising doing the brief without keeping the production crew in mind. We'll get back to this in a minute. The second big mistake was that the amount of scenes we briefed was just insane for a single shoot. If we had to choose between shooting 5 rushed scenes and 1 properly shot scene, we picked the latter every day of the week. In the post-production, we prefer having 1 good scene at our disposal compared to 5 rushed ones. We will get into the ideal amount of scenes per shooting as we go through this chapter. Now, why are we opening this module with the briefing? Simply because everything starts with the briefing. It will be hard to run your numbers and do your budget if you don't have access to the shooting brief. You can't even pick your talents if you don't have a clear idea of what's the brief that you will be shooting. Just like that, you can't pick your location nor your props. Everything starts with the briefing. And as you can probably see, the better the brief, the better the rest. If you prepare a low quality brief, you're gonna end up with a low quality shooting, and as a result, you will have to deal with low performance most likely. As regards the brief structure, we like to see the brief as some sort of a manual for talents and the production crew, and they are required to go through it before the shooting day. This allows us to avoid long debriefs on the location and start shooting as soon as the talents arrive. As part of the general information, we include a small description of the brand, the tone of voice, some target customer information, and some of the past winners. We do that so that talents can add some context to the instructions that they get during the shooting. We were not doing this initially, and ever since we started implementing it, the quality went up by far. Although it might sound redundant, making sure that the entire production crew goes through the brief is very important. Everybody knows they're on a mission, and they understand precisely what they have to come back to the office with. Right after the general information, we share some information about the casting and the location. The main point here is that we want everybody to somehow visualize what's gonna happen during the shooting before the shooting. Shooting content is kind of a messy environment. There are many variables that are not under our control, so we want to maximize the ones that are under our control and that somehow we can influence. The overall approach is that wherever we can get a 0.1 marginal gain, we absolutely go for it. After casting a location, we have a small section for the line manager so that they can get all the equipment and the props needed on time. We usually aim at having everything ready at least 2 days before the shooting. Then we finally get to the actual briefs. We split the briefs in 2 categories. We start with the non-spoken visual shots, then we move on to the sound bites. Depending on the product and the industry we are shooting for, what I'm about to say might slightly change, but we usually follow this order. The product shots first, then we do the product in use or demonstration if you refer to our concepts, product benefits, product alternatives and props, which you can refer to as the old way versus new way for our concepts, then the before and after transformation in weird and bizarre shots. For each of these categories, we include the type of shot, the location, and the instructions for talent and videographer. If possible, we also include a clear reference so that everybody knows what the end result looks like. Right after the visual scenes, we have the sound bites or the direct-to-camera shots. Sound bites are videos in which we grab the audio too. We manage these shots a bit differently since sounds tend to be a little tricky. We want audio quality to be as high as possible, and we need to make sure that the location is relatively quiet. While for the first part of the shootings, the people who are on set are not a big deal, they must be quiet during the second part. As regard the order here, we usually follow this one. The hooks first, so we call them the gut scenes, then the body or brain scenes, and then the CTAs or pocket scenes. Again, keep in mind that we are always working to build our own stock footage library, so work with that end result in mind. We talked earlier about the total amount of scenes that we should include in a brief, and we find the cap to be at around 100 scenes per day per videographer. If you're working with multiple videographers, you do the math. But if you're shooting for multiple brands at once, for example, then my recommendation would be to always keep 100 scenes as a cap and then work around the ratio per brand. I would not recommend shooting more than 2 brands a day, unless you have rented or hired a very specific resource that you might want to use for multiple brands. Example, if you have rented a golf court and you want to shoot for 3 brands, then it would make sense to shoot 3 brands more than 2. But unless this is the situation, I would recommend 2 tops, ideally 1 per day. Finally, I want to leave you with one last recommendation before moving on to the next chapter. I would highly recommend leaving space for the actors to use their own brain and their own words. When you want the talent to use exactly the words that are on the brief, state it clearly. But if not necessary, then get them to understand the gist and then word it the way it feels more natural to them. You remember we talked about the authenticity, right? So that's why. And you want to do the same, leaving space to the production crew. During the shooting, it always happens to get inspired and see something that was not planned but that would look incredibly cool on camera, and that would be a great addition to our stock footage library. Make sure you leave some space for your crew to over-deliver. This is it for this chapter. Buckle up, because in the next one we will be talking about money and budgets and running your numbers, and I'm gonna show you how we budget our shootings based on the briefs. So let's go. All right, Chapter 8, Budgeting. One of the key concepts of this course is that we're not in Hollywood and we are not shooting anything high-end. We are heavily focused on performance. As part of the performance piece, we want our shootings to be extraordinarily cost-effective. In this chapter, you will learn more about how we allocate the budget of our shootings and what is the thinking behind it. It goes without saying that everything I want to talk about in this class has been learned the hard way, wasting tens of thousands of dollars before figuring out one thing or two. We did not budgeting for the first shootings. We didn't negotiate anything. We just paid whatever we had to pay for as it came. Location? We got the fanciest location available, and location alone was around $1,400 for a day. It was some sort of an event venue and absolutely the worst choice for our shootings. To give you an idea, if we don't need anything specific, we pay around $500 for 2 days with early check-in at 8 a.m. That's 2 full days of shooting. Each talent negotiated their daily budget, even though they had no experience and no portfolio, and guess what? We just accepted anything and paid for it. We had no experience in the field, and on top of that, we were kind of in a rush, which is a terrible combination by default. Another big mistake we kept doing for a long time was calling all the talents for 1 full day. That meant paying all of them for the entire day, even though that was not necessary, but also having more people to manage on set, more people complaining about whatever, and most importantly, more stress for the production crew. Enough mistakes, let's focus on solutions. First things first, once the brief is ready, you do the budgeting. Why is this important? It is crucial because you can always find better talents, better locations, better equipment, better props, better everything. So you want to have a clear number in mind, and you don't want to go beyond that number. That's your cap for the shooting. Ideally, you will end up spending less. The question then becomes, how do I do the budgeting? Do I just shoot a random number and I try to stick with it? As foolish as it might sound, that's pretty much what we did for a long while. Then we developed our own system, and it works relatively well. As an agency, we work with multiple brands, and what we noticed is that each brand has its own biggest expense. Some brands spend more than others on talents. It might be for several reasons, but to give you a quick example, Think of a brand that sells products for a very specific audience. Finding relatable talents is gonna be hard. Other brands spend more on locations. Other brands spend more on location. They might be more wide in terms of audience, but they might need a very specific location for the shooting. Think of a brand that requires access to an entire gym for a full day of shooting. Then you have others that spend more on props. We worked with one that literally destroyed 3 brand new iPhones per shooting. You want to sit down and take some time to figure out what would be the biggest expense for your brand. Run the numbers and feel free to play around with some imaginary examples. Well, your shooting day, and most importantly, your budget, will have to gravitate around that biggest expense. Let's say your biggest expense is props. Then you want to locate a budget for props and reverse engineer the shooting day budget based on that. Ideally, you want to obtain 2 numbers. The first one is shooting day budget. The second one is cost per final ad. For the cost per final ad, look at the brief and see how many final ads you will be able to shoot from start to finish. For now, in this phase, we tend not to consider the variations you will be able to create using the shots as part of your stock footage. That number becomes the North Star for your budget. One more important aspect to keep in mind is that all our production crew is on a payroll, so we don't include it on the shooting budgeting, but we spread the expense across all of the shootings we have at the end of the month. If you work with freelancers that you have to call per shooting, then you might want to add that to the calculations as well. The maximum we have spent per ad to this day is $250. Whenever possible, we try to stay lower than that, obviously. Now, once we have the budget, we give it to the line producer and they deal with it. That budget must be enough for talents, locations, props, and taking care of the crew, talents included, during the day. As regards talents, more often than not, they tend to be the biggest expense. We will get into details in the next chapter, but as a standard fee for a full day of shooting of an experienced talent, we're looking at $100. You see how many talents you need, but we usually structure the briefs so that we can get them to stay on set for just half a day. If they stay for a full day, not only will our entire crew be more stressed and have more variables to deal with, but we would also have to allocate more budgets to take care of them during the day, and there will be more to follow. Next category is location. Location is a bit of a funky one, but you literally have unlimited locations to pick from. We started with event venues, and now our go-to option, I would say, is Airbnb. We also partnered up with several agencies in our area to work with for short rentals. The main thing to figure out is that you always want your shooting to start early in the morning. You have access to more natural light and you can shoot more content overall. So basically, the standard check-in on Airbnb is not ideal, but you want to negotiate an early check-in. Ideally, you want to find recurring partners and get access to the place the night before, so you can leave all the equipment and products ready for the morning. Our North Star for 2 days of shooting plus access to apartment the night before is $500, as I said before. We get to 1 full day plus access to the apartment the night before, around $300. We will get into the deal details in the location chapter. Then the next expense is props. Props can be very expensive and change based on the brand. So you must allocate your own budget accordingly, and unfortunately there's not much you can do with this. Just make sure that whoever works on the briefs keeps in mind the props budget as well, and don't just imagine amazing props that are completely out of budget. Finally, you want to take care of the crew, talents included. Our meaning of taking care is pretty simple. We want to give them food, coffee, water throughout the day. You have several options, and they might change based on the amount of talents you have on set. You can go from catering to groceries or food delivery. We usually allocate around $100 to $150 per day for all of the above. Transportation tends also to be a very nice touch depending on how far your location is from wherever they live. But you don't want to go overboard with it, as transportation becomes very expensive very quickly. You want to be kind to talents, not only because it's nice to be kind, but also because you can call them again and again if they turn out to create some winning content. And this is it. This was a breakdown of all the budgeting methods that we adopted in our experience, and I would love you to implement everything here and save a ton of money. In the next chapter, we will dive deeper into casting and how to find the right talents for your shootings. Let's go. Alrighty, chapter 9, casting. Sit tight, because casting is hands down the most underrated aspect of producing content for performance. Or at least it used to be for us. And that led to quite a lot of mistakes that I would like you to avoid. So when we started shooting content for our clients, talents were kind of a collateral aspect of the pre-production. Initially, we built a small roster of talents and we expected to pick the right ones based on briefs. There was no casting, but just a roster of 30 talents for all the clients. Soon enough, we realized that we were adapting the briefs to the talents we had at our disposal, and it should have been the complete opposite. First, you work on the brief, then you cast for the best and most relatable talents. And the meaning of best is another thing we learned the hard way. The most relatable talent is not always the best option. Although we don't want to work with navigated actors as they make the ad look more like ads, as we said before, we want people with strong facial expressions. Facial expressions work incredibly well on camera, and flat talents make you want to scroll away immediately, pretty much. On top of that, good talents not only give you better results, but they also make you save time, which leads to more shots you can test out. For all of the reasons above, we added auditions to our process as well. The key concept I want you to bring home is that the same brief with two different talents can bring completely different results. Same brief, two different talents, you can easily end up with one incredible ad and a shitty ad. It's not only about the person itself, but it's also about their energy, their authenticity, and so much more. Let's go through each step of the process. First things first, you want a good casting director. It doesn't have to be somebody with years of experience in the field, but ideally you want somebody who will be in charge of the talents. Their main responsibility will be constantly finding new talents that fit the brand, asking for their availability, and making sure that everything falls into place in the days leading up to the shooting. If you're shooting for multiple brands, then the casting manager becomes responsible for all the brands. One of the biggest levers we use in our ads is relatability, and as you can expect by now, it's completely in their hands. So you want to make sure that they take part in the pre-production meetings and understand exactly what type of person is needed for the shooting. Depending on how you structure your team, you might have somebody else in charge of finding new talents, but if you're working on one brand, I would highly recommend having the casting manager in charge of that too. And as time goes by, the more I realized the value of running a smaller team. Less people lead to less communication and more time to be productive. Either way, it's important to have somebody in charge of making sure that we always have new talents available. There's nothing worse in performance than talent scarcity. You do want to build your own roster of go-to talents, but at the same time, you constantly want to find new faces as well as open up new audiences with your ads. You never want to be in the position where you are forced to work with a certain talent just because time is ticking and you have no other alternative at your disposal. Now, the question becomes, how do they find new talents? Well, there are several options, and I would split them based on our needs. Are we looking for a specific demographic, or we want to just replenish our talents pipeline? For the former, one option that I really like is casting platforms. If you're in the United States, but not only, you have platforms such as Backstage.com and ProjectCasting.com. We tend to use this option when we're looking for a very specific demographic, since you can see the talents portfolio and you get them listed and sorted out based on your filters. That being said, I wouldn't recommend this option to replenish your talents pipeline. Depending on where you are based out of, it might be hard to find talents. And on top of that, sometimes it is a bit hard to find people with little to no experience on the platform. Once again, we don't want our ads to look like ads, and we had problems with talents coming from different fields to look genuine and authentic on camera. Not to mention, some of them work with agencies, and that tends to make things much more complicated than they need to be. Another option that we use quite often is direct outreach on social media. The casting manager finds somebody in your area who fits the role and reaches out to them. Not everybody will be interested in the gig, but chances are that a good percentage of people will be interested in hearing more about it at least. At the end of the day, let's keep in mind that many people dream about becoming an actor, and we're literally giving them an opportunity to get some experience and start building their commercial portfolio. Then, if we are not in a rush to find somebody fast, I would recommend building your own talents pipeline. As mentioned before, you want casting abundance at any given time. There's nothing worse than casting scarcity. The way we build our own roster of talents is simply by running ads in our area and getting those who are interested to apply to our form. The form doesn't have to be anything complicated, but it's important that you get information related to the demographics and, most importantly, an introductory video. We ask them to record it either on Loom or simply on a phone, but we want to hear them speak and we want to get an idea of their energy. Then you simply mark the ones that you like and get them to come to your office or studio for a casting day. If you don't have space to accommodate them, you can always rent it relatively easily, and you should be able to do it by the hour. The casting day is crucial at 99 ads. We don't want to hire people based on the pictures or the videos, but we want to see them in real life and get a taste of what hanging out with them for an entire day would look like. Bad energy on set means actors not happy to work and eventually bad performance. You want to protect the energy on set. So for the casting day, we take around 15 minutes per person, in which we take some full body pictures, a 360 video, and a quick intro to see how they speak on camera. Then we ask them about their passions, what are their interests, and ideally we want to find interests that are somehow related to the products we want to shoot with them. If you can find somebody who's genuinely interested in the product category that you're promoting, that's gold. Also, during this small chat, we want to be on the lookout for red flags. Nothing crazy, but if they sound flaky or not too committed to the role, you might want to skip them right away. It's incredibly annoying to find out that one of the talents is not showing up the day of the shooting, once you have already the entire crew on set, once you rented the location, and once you're ready to go. Before they leave, you want them to sign up a waiver. We do this based on all the content we shoot for them, not only during the casting, but also on set. You can also use multiple waivers per shooting, but it's not strictly necessary. The simpler the better in my opinion, but make sure that everything works out based on your legislation. Finally, before the shooting, if you want to hire them, I would recommend sending them just one part of the brief and see how they would audition for it. It's up to you whether you're gonna pay for it or not, but we find this useful for two main reasons. The first one, you know that the actor reads the brief before the shooting day, which is quite important, and we'll get more into this in the following chapter. And also you get an idea of how they would perform on set. And this is pretty much it about the casting. Again, in my opinion, casting is the most important part of the pre-production, and you wanna get it right. If you have the right people on set, then it's very, very likely that you're gonna end up shooting some amazing content. In the next chapter, we will be talking about locations. So let's go. Alrighty, new chapter. We're gonna talk about location. Memes aside, in this chapter, we talk all things location. There are some big misconceptions we had to overcome at the very beginning, and as usual, they cost us thousands of dollars. One of the core principles I would like to start this chapter off with is that in order of importance, we see casting first and location right after. Location is absolutely crucial when it comes to creating the right vibe and the atmosphere of the ad. If you pair it with the right music, then you are off to a great start. We will talk about that in the post-production module. Let's talk about some of the mistakes we made and that I would like you to avoid. The overall interpretation of locations seems to be the fancier, the better. It could not be further from the truth. We analyze thousands of ads every single week, and trust me when I tell you that a very limited amount of the real winners come with a fancy location or a high-end studio. Most of the winning scenes are shot in a homey type of environment, type of setup. And why do you think is that? At this point of the course, you should be able to imagine that. Ads that work are ads that are relatable. The fancier the location, the more unlikely it is that the viewer is gonna relate with that situation. Just like the talent, the location must be relatable and cannot look too distant from reality. Let's say you are shooting ads for a skincare product. Would it be more relatable for the viewer to shoot it in a bathroom or in a castle? The goal is to recreate the actual situation the end consumer will leave using the product. The closer we can get to that, the better our ads will perform. It goes without saying that our mistake was renting unbelievable locations to then find out that literally none of the scenes we shot would perform. The very first place we rented for our shootings cost us $1,400 a night, without an earlier check-in. Subsequently, our second big mistake was trying to build a warehouse with multiple studios. Each studio would be furnished as a simple room, ideally with furniture and props ready to move around based on the product we wanted to shoot. This was not ideal for so many reasons it's not even funny, but money investments aside, you want to keep things simple and flexible when it comes to location. Again, just like with casting, you want to have an abundance of locations available to pick and choose based on the specific brief. Working with a single warehouse will inevitably burn the locations and you constantly have to renew them, which is not ideal. And finally, the bigger the warehouse, the less natural light you have access to. Natural light is a natural performance boost. You want to get as much of it as you can.
In warehouses, you can get amazing studio lighting, but it will never be like natural light. So, what solution did we go for? Well, we currently use a few, but the best one, if you're starting from scratch and you want to build a solid rotation of locations, then I would recommend you simply start looking at Airbnb. Airbnb is exactly what we are looking for in terms of an abundance of options. Depending on where you're based out of, you might have some solid alternatives. Event venues can still be a good one depending on how pricey they get, but again, you want to keep things simple. If this is the first time you are renting a location for your videos, there are a few non-negotiables that our line producer always keeps in mind, and I want you to do the same. The first one is the light. We need lots of natural light. Big spaces, massive windows. The more windows, the better. Avoid places with walls painted dark or whatever color in general that is not light. There are always exceptions, of course, based on what you're shooting, but very rarely. Then you want a place that is not too compact. You will be spending the day there with lots of talents, lots of people, lots of equipment, in lots of products as well, most likely. If the place is too small, it's gonna be hard to fit everybody and make them feel comfortable. The place also needs several locations, several separate locations, I would say. So several spots you can take videos at. If you take all the videos at the same spot, all the ads are gonna look very similar, and although you might be able to pull it off with some experience, multiple spots give you an opportunity to spice things up a bit. I'd suggest your line producer sharing the location with the videographer before booking it. Videographers usually have an eye for it and are able to visualize all the scenes before shooting them. The best case scenario would be actually visiting the location before booking it, but it's not always an option, of course. You will be bringing the props to the location, so sometimes you also want to make sure that the props look good at the location. Think of mirrors, clothes rack, and whatever else might fit the briefs for the products you want to shoot. Now, as regards reaching out to Airbnb hosts, that's probably harder than you would imagine, or at least that I used to imagine. We like to be open and honest about what we're gonna do in the apartment. We are an advertising agency and need different locations for our content, or at least that's what we've been told multiple times. They are usually happy to work with us once they understand we are a legitimate agency shooting straightforward product ads. However, expect some initial hesitation. I would recommend testing out multiple reach out scripts and see which ones get the best replies. This is going to be a problem just at first, since once they see that you are willing to pay up front and not even spend the night at the apartment and leave everything clean, they will push for you to come back. All the hosts we worked with are more than happy to keep working with us and always offered better terms for the second shooting and from the second shooting on, to be fair. Once you build your own roster, you are in a very good position. As regards the deal structure, we structure it as follows. We get the apartment keys the day before the shooting so we can leave products and equipment ready for the following morning. Then we check out around 8 p.m. of the shooting day. If we do a 2-day shooting at the same location, then we check out around 8 p.m. of the second day. We ask hosts for the phone number so we can communicate relatively fast. One of the biggest challenges of shooting content is making all pieces fall into place. You get confirmation from all the talents, then you book the location. It works well for us like this, so I would recommend to do the same. Third, pricing. We try to stay around $300 for a 1-day shooting, given the structure mentioned above. Maximum in $500 for the 2-day shooting. Whenever possible and necessary, the 2-day shooting in the same location tends to be quite convenient. And finally, extremely important, especially the first time you shoot in a new place. Leave the apartment immaculate. You want it to be cleaner than when you checked in. Again, try to stay on good terms with all the hosts you work with. If the content shot there turns out to perform well, you might want to come back. And as mentioned before, the second time there's always less traction. So this is it for the location chapter. In the next chapter, we will be talking about the final touches before getting on set. Let's go.
Alrighty, new chapter, final touches. This is how we wrap up pre-production and we enter the module about production.
In production, we will finally get behind the camera and hit rec. But first, let's make sure we get to the shooting day ready and avoid as many problems as possible. The hard part about shooting content for performance is not finding talents in and of itself. The hard part about what we're doing here is not scouting and looking for locations, as well as it's not staying behind the camera and shooting content. The real challenge is combining all the pieces together and making sure that they fall into place on shooting day. To list them out, we got talents, locations, products, and props. If you work with freelancers, you should probably add production crew to the pieces as well. We work with our in-house team, so we know that they are pretty much always available. But that being said, as complicated as it might sound, just don't overthink it. It's definitely not rocket science, and once you go through the first 5 to 10 shootings, start building your own roster of talents and locations, then it will become much smoother. Meanwhile, embrace the chaos and learn to swim in it comfortably. And obviously, by now, you know that we can't start a big chapter like this one without a bit of good old mistakes. From products that don't fit the talents, to props that don't work on the shooting day, or even props that are completely different to what was on the brief. We also had wrinkly products that looked terrible on camera, as well as locations that were completely different from what was offered in the first place. But one of the most unexpected problems we recently faced was that after logging in the perfect talents and location for one of our shootings, we found out on set that both talents had needle phobia, and they were supposed to use a micro needling device we were promoting. Quite clearly, they didn't go to the product page as recommended by us, but since they were cool promoting skincare products, they were not expecting needles. This was not their fault, as this is not something that you mention or you can expect on a shooting day, as well as I can't really consider it our casting manager's fault, as this was probably the first and last time a similar coincidence happened. However, this is a great testament to the level of attention to details required to avoid annoying situations. It goes without saying that we added an extra layer of questions and that I will be sharing it as part of our process in this chapter. Speaking of which, once our brief is ready, our process starts by picking the talents. We usually contact 3 times the amount of talents needed per shooting. Remember when we said that we always want abundance with talents? This is how. Once we put our eyes on the right talents available from our pool, we reach out to them asking if they would feel comfortable promoting the product, and we share the brief with them. Once we get their confirmation, then we ask them what their availability looks like for the week we're planning the shooting on, and put all the information into a simple spreadsheet. Once we get that, then we move on to the location piece and make sure that everything fits together. As time goes by, you will have your own roster of owners to reach out to directly, and that will be much smoother than the entire process. But for the first shootings, you will have to reach out to the owners, explaining everything is laid out in the location chapter. Once you get their confirmation, then you need to know when the location will be available on the week of the shooting. You put that information into the spreadsheet, run the options, and lock everything in. The talents, the location, and the props. We aim at having both talents and location locked in at least 1 week before the shooting. Sometimes it gets messy. Expect talents and owners to pull out, expect locations booked last minute. The more abundance, the better, as usual. Once that's done, we move on to props and products. Props are items that you can use during your shooting. You can think of props as something that helps you get the point across. Imagine a big mirror in a clothing ad. Or you can even use props for comparison videos. The old way versus new way concept is perfect for this. Your product solves a problem that used to be solved in a less efficient way. Use props to bully the alternative and promote your product. Props must be included in the brief. And ideally, you want all the props ready to be moved to the shooting location up to 2 days before the shooting. Keep that deadline in mind. If you have to order props online before the shooting, the shipping time is important to monitor. Another important aspect, lots of important aspects, many products and concepts will use similar props. Use them with care, and as time goes by, you will be building a proper props closet for your production crew. Make sure that you don't have to buy again and again the same props, but you can use and reuse the ones you already bought. Then as a final piece, you have the products. Products must be perfect, immaculate on the shooting day. The meaning of perfect changes based on the product, but you basically want products to look immaculate during the shooting. To give you an idea, we partnered up with a laundromat for all our clothing clients. Before each and every shooting, we wash and iron all the products. We did the very first shooting without the laundromat and it was not a good idea. Although we used a steamer before all the shots, you could definitely tell the difference. And obviously performance is lower if products don't look amazing. Speaking of clothing, size is another massive factor to keep an eye on. You want your talents to wear the size that fits them best. In order to do so, getting their measurements can definitely be helpful, but if you could bring to the shooting several sizes per product, that would be much better. And when it comes to clothing, depending on the fit, you might want to go one size smaller, and I generally see that working much better for multiple brands. The fit just looks much better, the product looks better on the person. So that might just be something that you want to test out. Then obviously, constantly make sure that sleeves are pulled down and there are no wrinkles across the item. The way you take care of these details can make it or break it. My recommendation is taking an hour or two to sit down and think about all the details that would make your product pop. Once that's done, you're pretty much good to go. Again, make sure you have everything ready 2 days before the shooting day maximum. And you bring everything to the location the night before. Scout for unexpected problems and prepare everything for the day after. The goal is to be able to walk in with the talents and start shooting right away. There's nothing more annoying than arriving at the location and getting everything ready while talents are there. I also recommend creating a WhatsApp group for all the people involved in each shooting and follow up on them every day for at least 3 days prior to the shooting. Get replies and make sure everything is cool. If you sense problems, do ask. And as always, expect chaos. If you're in production, that's what you signed up for, and that's what you must expect. This is it for the pre-production module. We will be adding new chapters as they become relevant, but for now, let's focus on the next module, production. We're gonna finally get on set and start shooting content. So I'll see you on the next module.
Chapter 12, Shooting on a Budget. This chapter opens up the third module of our course, and this module will revolve around production. We are finally getting behind the camera and shooting some high-performing content. As you can expect, this is the core module of the course. We will go through how we structure our production crew and how you can structure yours depending on your budget, as well as all the differences your videographer must keep in mind while shooting for performance. Then we will be talking about gear and lighting, and how to structure and manage your first shooting day. And finally, we will bring you on set and show you how we manage our shooting day. This is going to be another interesting module, and I want to use this introductory chapter to repeat one more time what we have been trying to achieve, so that you can have a better idea of how to interpret all of the information that I'm gonna give you. At 99 Ads, our hypothesis is that as time goes by, e-commerce stores will benefit more and more from having their own internal production crew. We truly believe that entering 2024, it's going to be remarkably hard to beat the exponential returns that running your own production crew can bring to any e-commerce store. Being able to shoot content on command, and most importantly, being able to do it fast with short turnaround times, it can be a game changer both for up-and-coming and for established brands. Does this necessarily mean that you have to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars in a cutting-edge studio? Or does this necessarily mean that you have to add tens of thousands of dollars to your payroll? Absolutely not. As counterintuitive as it may sound, the return on investment is at its absolute peak if we focus on performance. And shooting for performance is not shooting a documentary or a Netflix special. Focusing on performance can be much cheaper than you think. Our ideal production crew is as simple as it gets. We have 3 A players that run the shootings on their own, and the results are real. We ain't shooting no movies, and in this module, we will go through all the main sections that will constitute your production crew and how to make sure that you can maximize the output while minimizing the input. We won't ever compromise on performance while keeping our overhead as little as possible. Everything you will learn in this course will also apply if you want to sell performance shootings as a service. That's exactly what we do, and I believe the market is going to demand more and more of this moving forward. Either case, we made so many mistakes, it's not even funny. And this module is here for you to avoid as many as you possibly can while getting amazing performance. So without further ado, welcome to the production module. Chapter 13, Building a Production Crew. In my opinion, building your own production crew is the best investment you can make in e-commerce. If you're building a brand, you have constant access to new content to design high-performing ads. If you're in dropshipping, that becomes even more useful. The main point of dropshipping is that the product is out there for everybody to sell it. What makes you stand out is ads. We work with several dropshipping stores that are making incredible numbers, and they see remarkable results from our service. If you run an agency and want to start selling content that actually performs, I tend to believe that you need your own production crew. If you're a freelancer, you might want to know what are the roles you need support with and how you can bring your service to the next level, being able to serve more clients. In this chapter, I will talk to you about what we believe should be your core production crew and how we split responsibilities between pre-production and production. The misconception that gets people to stay away from the idea of building their own production crew comes from Hollywood. Huge production teams, massive budgets, and so much inefficiency. We want to stay lean and keep the return on investment as high as possible. I'm saying this because this is a field in which if you want to spend high amounts, you can spend literally as much as you want. I really want you to snap your fingers and forget about all the expectations you might have thinking about a production crew. We do performance. We don't shoot movies. We don't shoot documentaries. And it's funny because there are not many real performance experts out there. So most likely you will have to train them no matter how much you pay them. As usual, we had to learn this the hard way. Our first hire was a videographer. At the end of the day, you can be as lean as you want, but you can't do without somebody who stays behind the camera. Then we searched for the best videographers available in our area, and we found an amazing lady with 15 years of experience in production. She was a bit pricey, but we had big expectations from her. Even before calling her to the shootings, we called her for a casting day, and it was incredibly hard to work with her. First of all, she was a bit of a tough character herself, but I personally find it much more difficult to work with somebody who's got such a strong frame when it comes to work. When it comes to casting, we usually take a few full body pictures of the talents and then 2 videos. She didn't really see the point in taking the full body pictures and turn them into a portrait. Great shots, but that was not what we needed. And long story short, we interrupted our collaboration with her and went to a filming school to find students who wanted to make experience in performance. I'll share more on this later, but that's where we found our gem. The second mistake we made was expecting to hire a casting manager and a line producer remotely. Our thinking was, as long as we have somebody to take care of talents when it comes to casting, then we're good. But that turned out not to be a good idea. Ever since we got our casting manager, he's been in charge of our relationship with talents. He makes sure that communication is top-notch and takes care of them during the shootings. Also, one thing is seeing talents and pictures of them. Another thing is finding the perfect fit for a specific product or brand. We find it much more efficient for our casting manager to meet talents in person and get a better grasp of their vibe. Again, pictures and videos are good, but that's definitely not enough. And the same goes for our line producer. I will tell you in this chapter what they do and what their responsibilities are, but for now, let's just say that having a remote line producer was not ideal. Getting into the main topic of this chapter, do you even need a videographer? Do you even need somebody to stay behind the camera and somebody whose job is solely staying behind the camera? In my opinion, you do need a videographer, as you want somebody in charge of taking the content and, most importantly, somebody who's focused on constantly improving and learning more and more. For that reason, when looking for a videographer, I wouldn't search for skills, but I would search for coachability, humility, and passion. The longer a person has been shooting videos, the harder it will be to rewire their brain and get them to think performance. Again, we are not shooting documentaries. And this is a good segue to the next point. I talked to so many production studios and performance agencies while building our production crew. It's not even funny. I literally talked to everybody I could talk to. And when you talk to most of them, they tell you that you need at least a videographer, a film director, and a director of photography when it comes to taking content. Well, I don't think that's the case. I think that would be overkill for performance, and most importantly, it would defeat the purpose of being lean and wildly efficient. I'm bringing this up because the way we do things is a little different. We empower our videographer much more compared to the standard big studios. Rather than having a film director or a director of photography, our videographer takes on both responsibilities. We are wondering if we actually need a videographer, considering that performance depends on volume. Imagine a director of photography. On top of that, it's much easier to get one person trained on performance than all of the above. If your videographer is humble and coachable and really understands that his job is to shoot scenes that are gonna get people to take out their wallet, then you're set. Comparing what we do to big productions makes zero sense to me. We run a very small production crew and everybody needs to adapt. It's more simple than you can imagine, and at the end of the day, there are 3 macro responsibilities, and that's how we built our team. You have the content, you have the talents, and then you have location/products. Our videographer is in charge of the content. Then we have the casting manager and the line producer. The casting manager is in charge of the talents before and during the shootings. The casting manager is also the person that matches the brand with the right talents and also makes sure that all the talents are comfortable with the products and the scripts they are provided with. The casting manager makes sure that in the days leading up to the shooting, all talents are cool and all the questions are answered. Then during the shooting, the casting manager is there to take care of the talents. He's their main point of contact, and we kind of want him to pamper them through the day. We want our talents to almost feel spoiled. So if any of the scenes becomes a real winner, we can call them up and they will be more than happy to shoot with us again and again. Then we have the line producer. The line producer is another key person in our production crew. Before the shooting, the line producer is in charge of booking the location and taking care of products and props. To give you an example, the line producer is the person who brings the clothes to the laundromat, picks them up, and makes sure that the products look immaculate during the shooting. That's their responsibility. Also, the line producer takes care of the relationship between the company and the location owner, making sure that they want us in their property again and again in the future. And that's pretty much it. In my personal opinion, the biggest differences between what we do and what other big size production companies do is the role of the videographer. We train our videographer so we don't need all the roles mentioned above, and our videographer becomes a key piece during the performance shootings. The role of the casting manager and the line producer is pretty simple, and the overall goal is making sure that everything runs smoothly during the shooting. The area responsibilities are relatively limited, so there's not much room for mistakes if everybody does their job. And by the way, before we wrap up, this is how we structure the production crew to be self-sustained and not require anybody from our team apart from them. If you are a freelancer or a brand owner or even a dropshipper and you want to take part in the shootings, then you can easily take as much of these responsibilities as you want and replace the casting manager, the line producer, or even the videographer. We have some clients who are brand owners and shoot their own content, doing everything themselves. I don't have anything against that, but my recommendation would be building a self-sustained team so they can shoot even when you are not available, and the content can be taken really fast. And this is it for this chapter. In the next one, we will be talking about holding a camera for performance. Be excited because that's one of my favorite chapters. I'll see you there. All right, chapter 14, holding a camera for performance. This is probably the most important chapter of the course. If I could give you only one chapter to get a good grasp of what shooting for performance means, I would pick this one. The best videographers out there are very likely not to be the best ones at shooting for performance if they've never done it and if they didn't get trained for it. It all comes down to deeply understanding a few key concepts and putting them into practice, while monitoring the results and seeing how what you shoot translates into the ad account. The best videographers out there would prioritize the quality of the shot. They would make sure that everything is perfect and that they're telling an enticing story, whereas we only want people to reach into their pockets and insert their card details. They want to tell a story, we want to sell. That's what changes.
It goes without saying that we learned all of this the hard way, and that it cost us quite a lot of money, both in terms of opportunity costs, in shooting budget that went wasted simply because we trusted production veterans. Each shot was just an incredibly long scene, still and absolutely not dynamic. They didn't test different distances, no angle change, colors were radically different based on the time of the day, and part of the scene slightly blurred because of the manual focus. Specifically, with one of them, we told her, look, we should make it more dynamic from the camera or it will be hard to use these scenes for ads. And her reply was, nah, this is something that the post-production team can do. The more footage we give them, the better they can work. Although her point kinda makes sense, as time went by, we just realized that the scenes that she was shooting were completely different from the winning scenes that we had going for our long-term clients. One thing that you will notice if you start exploring the meta ad library or the TikTok top ads particularly, is that videos are completely on focus. The entire frame is unfocused, and that's something that you do with an iPhone. On top of that, the iPhone is much better at balancing the colors automatically compared to a DSLR camera. Not to mention that time spent changing lenses and manual settings and so on. But never mind for now, we will talk about the gear equipment in the next chapter. Meanwhile, the reason why I brought this up is just to get a point across. If you leave a veteran videographer in charge, 9 times out of 10, they will overthink it and make your life much more complicated than it needs to be. You are allowed to share this chapter with your videographers so that they can understand the key principles for performance shootings and focus directly on what brings results. First things first, you want to get a good grasp of the end result. Winning ads tend to be fast-paced and composed of many shots that are about 2 seconds long max. You want to shoot the content keeping in mind that you can have 2-3 minute long scenes, but everything that will be used is going to be a 1 to 2 second short scene. Why is this relevant not only in post-production but also in production, you might be asking? The answer is simple. Simply because the 5-minute unboxing videos with a videographer that holds a camera still doesn't make any sense from a performance perspective. If you want that type of shot, just set up a tripod. But if you want to shoot for performance, you'd better shoot as many good quote-unquote short scenes as possible. Now, the question then becomes, how do I get as many short scenes as possible? And that's a great question. At 99 Ads, we talk about it in terms of variables. While you are holding an iPhone, you have the following variables under control at any given time. And I'm gonna record a video so that I can upload this and we can just add it to this chapter. Now, the first one is angles. So you want to move your phone horizontally, and this is what it looks like. Just changing angle, you can find the shot to be much more interesting, and the subject all of a sudden becomes much more interesting. The second variable is the inclination of the iPhone. So in this case, we are moving it this way. And again, the goal is to find interesting shots, interesting frame, and make the product, in this case, this remote controller, as interesting as possible. The third variable is the height of the phone. So let's say this is the subject. I want to play with the height to see where it makes more sense, where it gets more interesting. Then the final one is the distance between the iPhone and the object. You have a lot of hooks, for example, that go this way, that work exactly like this. So they start with a bit of a bizarre type of shot, and then they move away from the subject. These are 4 variables. These are the one we use. You have again the angle, you have the inclination, then you have the height of the phone, where you can keep on doing the same thing, and finally you have the distance between the phone, the iPhone, and the subject. What you want to do is basically play with these variables, have fun while doing it, and see where the product looks best. Going back to our 5-minute unboxing video, rather than keeping the camera still, get as many good short scenes as possible playing with the 4 variables that we just mentioned. Everything your video editors will need is good 2-second scenes. Focus on the output. As you learn more and more about performance, and as you get more practice, you will get to the point where you understand at the first glance what is interesting on camera and what not. In this case, what is interesting on an iPhone. Never forget about the end user. They will be the ones seeing your shots. How do you grab their attention? If you were in their shoes, what would make you stop scrolling? Play with all the variables above to make things interesting and get them to wonder, what is this? Let me see. Inclination and height, in my opinion, are hands down the most underrated combination for all the performance videographers. You can make anything interesting just by playing with inclination and height. Pull out your iPhone and test it out right now. Just stop the video and shoot your mouse, shoot your pen, shoot whatever you can find on your desk. I can promise you that if you understand this concept, it will become incredibly simple to find new winning scenes and consequently high-performing ads. One more thing that comes hard to understand to veteran videographers is that the end video will be seen on an iPhone, and as such, you want to be way closer than usual to the subject. You can always zoom in, zoom out in post-production, that's true, but we'd rather shoot directly at the right distance from the subject to get a better result. The rule of thirds applies to performance shootings as well, but you are not too concerned with cutting off part of the elements as long as whatever you're promoting is clearly highlighted. In performance, you always want the product you're promoting to be the attention center. Surprising, huh? Well, there are so many ads out there in which you are not even able to understand what is being promoted. Is that the outfit? Is that the watch? Is that the earring? What is that? That cannot happen in performance. If you wonder what is being promoted, that's how you can spot a bad ad in a videographer who doesn't understand performance. An experienced performance videographer knows how to put the product in the best light and make sure that there's no doubt that's exactly where we want our user to focus their attention on. In terms of length of the video, my personal opinion is that you just want to keep rolling. Again, we know that it doesn't matter how long our shot will be, our shot will be chopped off into multiple smaller shots, and that's the goal we are looking for. So while rolling, make sure you play with all the 4 variables mentioned above and constantly try to make the shot more interesting. Once you find an interesting shot, just stay there, play with it around for 10 seconds, then start playing again with your variables. Again, you have inclination, angle, distance, and height. You gotta have fun while doing it, or it's gonna be hard to find a good scene. On top of that, ask the talents to do different things. Based on our method, as a performance videographer, you are also asked to direct the talents. That's your 5th and last variable you can play with. When it comes to talents direction, I like to debrief talents before every shooting and explain them how they can be natural and genuine, but they have to do it 110%. They have to be 110% themselves. Whatever natural reaction or emotion they would show using the product or testing it for the first time, just emphasize that by 10%. If you overdo, it looks like an ad, so you lose their attention and they keep scrolling, they scroll away. But if you do less than what you should, then you become boring. In looking interesting on camera is just something different. It's not hard, but you want to be 110% yourself. And this is the type of direction you want to give your talents. You will be the one looking at the screen while shooting, and you want to make sure that whatever they're trying to get across, they go the extra mile by 10%. Don't be afraid to ask them to redo the scene again and again. In actual high-end productions, they can do the same scene literally for days. Doing one scene for 10 or 20 times should not be out of the picture if you're not happy with the result. And this is pretty much it. In the next video, I'll show you how to play with the variables above practically. And at the end of the module, you will also find an actual vlog that we shoot on set where I show you what an actual shooting session looks like. In the next chapter, we will be talking about gear in what you need. Chapter 15, Talking Gear. We are finally at the gear chapter of the course, and although this entire course is based on the fact that we want to maximize the returns of building our own production crew and shooting our own content for performance internally, I wouldn't recommend saving on equipment. Alongside this chapter, you will find also a list of recommended options based on the budget. If you can invest some money on this, I would recommend you do it. In today's day and age, content is one of the strongest leverages you can use. All the money you invest in gear, it will bring back amazing returns. I would like you to really understand the potential return of a good piece of equipment that your team that you will use for 3 to 5 years. Imagine improving by even just 0.1% all the content you shoot in 3 years. In 5 years. If you run ads on that content, the return is astronomical. Think about that before budgeting for your gear. The good news is that thanks to this course, you will go straight to what is actually necessary, avoiding all the bad investments we made ever since we started shooting for performance. The first big mistake was spending around $5,000 to buy a DSLR camera, several lenses, and a DSLR gimbal, to then come to the conclusion that it just makes no sense to shoot on a DSLR. At least, this is what we found. I'll motivate everything in a second. As mentioned in one of our previous chapters, we also rented a RED camera expecting that what makes content perform is the gear. But no, it's not. It actually makes things much more complicated if you think about the size of the files, the differences in terms of colors and their impact if we are mix and matching all the shots that we have in our stock footage library, and much more. Another big mistake was buying way too many lights, expecting to build up an actual studio to shoot our content, to then find out that over 90% of the winning ads were not shot in a studio, but in a simple apartment. It's been a fun and expensive ride. Anyhow, let's get this party started with the big question. Should I shoot on a DSLR camera or on an iPhone? Look, I won't go nerd about it, simply because I wouldn't be able to do it properly. And as a professional, I'd rather say I'm not an expert than pretending I'm not. I'm not a video expert, I'm a performance expert. And as such, I can tell you that we really wanted to make it work with DSLR cameras. Big lenses, incredible lights, and expensive studios, but it didn't. I loved getting on set and seeing our production crew working on these big devices. It was pretty badass and made the entire team look much more professional. But we get hired to deliver winners, and that's what we have to do. Do me a favor, open up your 4Play account on a different tab and look at the most saved ads. How many of them are shot on DSLR? Much less than 10%. The easiest way for me to spot what a specific scene has been shot on is the focus. If the frame is completely on focus, then it's almost certain that it's been shot on an iPhone. If the subject is on focus and the rest of the frame is somewhat blurred, then it's been shot on a DSLR. iPhones have the panoramic mode, but it's not yet there and it's not comparable to a DSLR used properly. Getting back to 4Play, how many of the most saved ads are not completely unfocused? Exactly, close to zero. If you ask why that is, I've been looking for an answer for a long while, and now I can tell you that there are two main reasons. Reason number one is that lower quality gives the content more authenticity. More authenticity inevitably leads to more sales. I believe we mentioned this earlier in the course, but social media is supposed to show you content that other people created. The social aspect of it is what makes it engaging, and it's not as compelling for you to engage with a luxury brand ad, for example. You can tell there's no authenticity. The red carpet model shows you how beautiful she is and how good her makeup artist is, but it's not relatable at all to most of the people out there. People buy when they see somebody they relate to using or promoting a product. As easy as that. The more authentic and genuine it looks, the more likely they will be to buy. It's not rocket science. Reason number two is more technical. Today, it makes no sense to shoot anything heavier than 1080p. Social media platforms are going to compress your content, and 1080p is the maximum allowed on most platforms for now. There are some 4K tests here and there, but we get back to the authenticity point. On top of that, don't forget that you'll have to manage and move these files in the post-production. Moving 4K files is way more complicated than 1080 files. Keep that in mind while shooting your content and picking your weapon. As regards us at 99 ads, there are a few more reasons why we decided to land on iPhone as our go-to device to shoot content. In terms of auto-color balance, iPhone is hard to defeat. The quality of all the shots is consistent even in different scenarios. We do performance, and as mentioned on our first module, we constantly want to add new shots to our stock footage library in order to mix and match the best performing ones to design new winners. If some shots are on DSLR with a specific lens, other with another lens, or even another DSLR, then we have customers shot on iPhone. It gets hard to combine them seamlessly. Another pro is that the entire production crew gets an instant idea of what the scene looks like on iPhone. Don't forget that most of the users will watch the video on iPhone, so what better than an iPhone to see if it grabs your attention? And finally, it's way easier to use and shoot with compared to a DSLR camera. You don't need to change batteries, you don't need to change lenses, there's no manual settings, all the accessories are light and practical. For all the reasons above, iPhone beats DSLR cameras every day of the week at 99 ads. As regards what iPhone to buy, if you don't have one already, I'd say that anything from the iPhone 12 Pro Max on works just fine. We try to stay up to speed with all the new releases. The return on iPhones is just way too high for us to save on that. The next big aspect of shootings is the audio. Hear me right, you can't compromise on audio. Although lower quality videos add a bit of authenticity to our ads, lower quality audio gets people to scroll away immediately. Especially on earphones, bad audio quality is just a no-go. So how do we avoid that problem? There are a few different instances. If you're shooting product shots, unboxing, or product in use scenes, most likely you won't be taking any audio. In most cases, you show those scenes while playing background music and a voiceover. If you're grabbing sound bites and talking heads, you want to use a shotgun mic. Our go-to is the Sennheiser MKE600. The audio quality is just incredible, and the good thing is that you can see the mic on screen. We also use the Rode Wireless Go 2 if and only if the brand guidelines allow for a mic to be seen on camera. Most brands want to have a clean image, but it's up to them. The Go mics are very practical, but the big downside is that they are almost impossible to hide. Then while shooting, I would recommend your videographer uses a good pair of headphones to hear if the audio is good or if there is any problem. Our go-to headphones are the Shure SRH 440A. One more thing we can't compromise on is the steadiness of the shot. iPhone does a remarkable job at stabilizing the shots, but we need to go the extra mile. Shaky shots are just a no-go, almost to the same extent as the audio. This becomes particularly relevant on scenes with some sort of movement, think of a walking or a running scene. For these instances, we use the DJI Osmo Mobile 6 with the DJI phone clamp. It's compact and easy to use. Then finally, we have lights. You can't compromise much on lights either. Good lights make the product pop. However, as time goes by, we realize that good lighting doesn't really depend on the gear as much as it does on the location and the external conditions. Let me explain. We use artificial lights such as the Aperture Amaranth 200D, that's the light out there, in the Godox TL60 that right now we have out there. But it doesn't matter how much you spend on artificial lights. So the most impactful thing you can do to get good lighting is picking the right location. You can go back to the location chapter, but in a nutshell, you want big spaces, big windows, and amazing lighting. That natural light will make your products pop and eventually lead to more winning scenes. This is pretty much it for the gear. Attached to this chapter, you will also find a list of all our recommendations based on the budget. In the next chapter, we will be talking about the shooting day and how to structure it in order for everything to run smoothly. Let's go. Chapter 16, Shooting Day. It's finally match day. We got here after watching quite a lot of videos, and if you understood and implemented everything correctly, the likelihood of you and your crew going out there and coming back with some killer content is pretty high. The goal of this chapter is setting the expectations right when it comes to the actual shooting, what is achievable and what is not achievable, and most importantly, give you our process of how we run things. Rest assured that preparation beats problems. It doesn't matter how many problems and unexpected events occurred, you will be able to deal with them and go back home with amazing content to add to your stock footage library. Preparation allows you to make the most of all the variables that are under your control, and that's absolutely essential considering how many aspects of each shooting are not under our control. And another key piece of advice is embrace the chaos. Expect plugs not working, delayed check-ins, talents in hangover, talents that don't show up, products that are stained, apartments that stink, and much more. Do not expect perfection. Expect chaos and learn how to thrive on it. Everything you will learn in this chapter will help you do this. The first shootings we did were a complete mess, and thankfully you can avoid part of those mistakes. As mentioned before, preparation is what makes the difference. I remember the first shootings and us literally reading the scripts for the first time at the shooting, trying to figure out how the creative strategist wanted us to shoot and how they wanted the talents to move. Same goes for the order of the scenes. Initially, we were just following mindlessly whatever was on the brief in that order. That is not ideal, and now we have a pre-shooting meeting in which we go through all the shots and make sure we find the best orders to save as much time and resources as possible. Not to mention, on our first shooting, we had 1 videographer and 10 talents. The shots would require only 1 talent at the time, so you can imagine the chaos of having 9 people just hanging out for the entire day. Anyhow, this won't be the case for you if you follow everything you learn throughout this course and everything you are about to learn here in this chapter in terms of process. First things first, on the shooting day, you get to the location and you find all the products and gears waiting for you from the night before. The crew and the talent just show up and it's game time. The first thing we do while offering coffee is an initial debrief. In this debrief, we touch on 3 main topics. The first one is about the interpretation of the script. A slight exaggeration works amazingly on social media. A slight exaggeration works amazingly well on social media. So we tell them to keep it authentic and genuine, but to be 110% themselves. Emphasize whatever they want and however they would react by a tiny 10%, particularly their facial expressions. The second topic is don't be scared of getting things wrong. Actually, we found some long-lasting winners thanks to talent's mistakes. Nobody on set has time to waste, but getting things wrong and making mistakes, especially for talents that are not required to have years of experience, it's absolutely fine and we can always take more takes, no problem. Then the third and final point is that we explain the structure of the day and what they can expect from our team. We also explain the responsibility of each of the team members and who to ask questions depending on the topic. Easy peasy. After the debrief, which is something that our line producer usually takes care of, our casting manager goes through the brands we are going to be shooting. The casting manager reads from the script the tone of voice of the brand as well as the do's and don'ts. Then shows the reference board to all the talents. We find this part to be extremely important so that talents understand the client perspective. We want them to understand what is the end client they are talking to. And then it's time to shoot. We usually start with product shots first. We do that for a couple of reasons. The main one being that talents can get warmed up while using their hands for unboxing or showing the product. There is no acting skill required, so no pressure for them. Don't forget that this is the first time that most of them are shooting, so we want to be nice to them. Also, we want to shoot any unboxing scene before anything happens to the product and to the package. Let's get those shots out of the way immediately and move on to the next category. The next category is product news. Here we need a bit of acting, but still no use of their voice, so it's still moderately easy. This is where we want them to wear or use the product, do some transitions, and so on. At this point of the day, if we're doing a single brand for the entire day, we have shot around 50 scenes, around 25 product shots, and around 25 product news scenes. This is obviously a standard shooting, then depending on the brief, it might change, but overall, the goal is to get to launch with around 50 good scenes. Strong emphasis on the word good. If talents are staying half day, then this is when we swap them with the other ones. If we are working with the same talents for the entire day, then we offer them lunch. The casting manager asks if they have any allergies and keeps the ones that are not on set entertained during the day, and the line producer gets the food delivered. You have multiple options, but we usually end up with some food delivery app. Right after lunch, we usually shoot hooks. The level of acting is a bit more intense here. Depending on the script, they might have to talk or they might have to do something bizarre to grab users' attention. And then finally, we have sound bites. We leave sound bites at last as they are the most demanding in terms of acting skills, and sometimes talents get frustrated while recording. It doesn't happen often, but we want this to be the last bit of the day just in case. Usually, talents are very tired after shooting sound bites. So for that reason, we leave them at the end of the shooting. And that's pretty much it. We usually take care of transportation for talents too, but it's more of a nice touch than something you must do. My recommendation is not to overthink the entire process and never feel like it's too complicated. As mentioned before, it's not rocket science, and all those who tell you that they got it all figured out are just full of ass. Expect long days, expect problems, expect chaos, and you got this. You have access to this course. So all of the problems, all of the chaos I talked to you about on this course so far, it's going to be smooth sailing for you as you get started. So this is it for the production module, and in the next one, we will be talking about post-production. So let's get into it. Chapter 17, Intro to Post-Production. Post-production is the work that happens after the content has been shot. In filmography, it would include many different pieces from audio engineering to color grading, video editing, video animations, and much more. In filmography, it's something you would do once, and once the movie has been finished, that's it. You don't go back to it. In performance, we have less moving pieces, but it is an ongoing process. By now, you've learned that performance is all about volume, and what we're essentially doing when shooting our content is build a stock footage library and find new winning scenes that we can add to our formulas. So in filmography, we take our shots, we stitch them up together in post-production, and we go all in on the movie. Once out, it's out, we don't go back to it, there's no coming back. In performance, we can take as many shots as we want. We can test multiple variations at once, and we can create new variations of the winning scenes every time we want, and then variations of the winning variations again and again. We can literally keep this loop going forever if we want, considering that we periodically add new scenes to our library. We have new learnings on a weekly basis, and we want to make the most of them, week in, week out. Now, before getting into the meat of this module, let me be clear. Shooting for performance is not a post-production course. It's shooting for performance. So we are mainly focused on pre-production and production. We are working on putting together another program dedicated to post-production and repurposing, but we thought it would have made much more sense to start with how to shoot for performance. Good post-production comes much easier if you're working with good content that has been scripted and designed for performance. Story time. 99 Ads was born with zero production. When we started, we had no production crew and we couldn't shoot content for our clients. This was not ideal, and we kept dealing with it until it wasn't bearable anymore. We were basically offering a repurposing service whose goal was to deliver new winning ads weekly. Although we put incredible systems in place to make sure that we could get that result weekly, it was not ideal to know that the quality of the ads we delivered depended on the quality of the content that we were provided with by the client. This is how we built our production system and how we came up with everything you learned in this course. We knew exactly what we needed to get the best results from the repurposing efforts, and that's what we put together. So my point being, learn how to shoot amazing content first, then get ready for the repurposing program, because that's where we excel. That being said, in the next chapter, we will touch on the creative department and how we structure it in terms of the responsibilities and the skills needed. Let's roll! Chapter 18, Creative Department. Production crew stands to production as the creative department stands to post-production. This is the way we look at it, and we try to keep things simple, stupid. We work with what you would consider many brands at any given time, and each brand has their own creative department assigned. Each creative department consists of a creative strategist, a media buyer, a video editor, and a graphic designer. You don't necessarily need this entire team, and I'm assuming that you already have part of the roles taken care of already. At 99 Ads, the creative strategist is of pivotal importance for the entire engine to run smoothly. The creative strategist puts together both the brief for the shooting and the brief for the post-production. The creative strategist puts together the product and the market research, analyzes the information that gets provided by the media buyer, and visualizes the content needed to create some amazing ads. Then once the shooting happens, they go through all of the content and create the brief for the video editor and the graphic designer. If you're looking for your creative strategist, keep in mind that it's not as easy to find a great one that is ready to hit the ground running. In my opinion, this is one of the roles most sought after in the entire market, at least when it comes to e-commerce stores. A good creative strategist can single-handedly change the trajectory of a store. It's sad to say that often it's not the store with the best product that wins, but it's the store with the best advertising strategy. I could name tens of stores off the top of my mind that have grown much more compared to the quality of the products they sell, and I believe you could do the same. My point being that don't expect not to put in the work to get a good creative strategist in place. Especially at the very beginning, lots of back and forth will be required, but once you get yours ready to roll, expect exponential results. When we look for a creative strategist, we usually look for people that have at least 2 years of experience in media buying and ideally some agency experience. If they worked with an agency before, they have hopefully seen several brands and learned how to adapt their ideas to different tones of voice. Experience as a project manager could also be incredibly helpful, considering that they will be managing both the production crew and the rest of the creative department. Then you need a media buyer. When we work with our clients, they run their own ads. We deliver new ads every week and they launch them. So they have their own media buyers. Now, if you have your own media buyer, that's cool. And you want your media buyer to communicate as often as possible with your creative strategist. Our media buyers focus exclusively on data analysis, and they share and discuss all the data with our creative strategist. That's how they constantly come up with new winning ideas, and they also understand which ones of the tests have failed. They go back and forth on why they failed, they make their own assumptions, and they do their best to get better results on the following test. When we are hiring for media buyers, we look for those with at least 2 years of experience in commerce. It's crucial that it is a commerce experience. We do performance and we want people who are used to playing with KPIs and metrics. Rational thinking is another incredible skill that we need for this role. Now, think of how much data you get working like this in running new tests every single week, and you start understanding how performance works. That's how we get so many case studies and find winners almost like clockwork for our clients. Once they put together their assumptions, the creative strategist turns them into brief for the creative department. And that's where video editor and graphic designers take the field. Video editors and graphic designers are much easier to find in the marketplace compared to the other roles, simply because these are two roles that have been on the market for decades and decades. We look for video editors and graphic designers who ideally have at least 1 or 2 years of experience in e-commerce, and ideally at least part of it in an agency.
The type of ads we create are not hard to edit or design, but we want them to be exceptionally attentive to details and fast, very fast. Again, volume is of critical importance. Once we have to run a test, we cannot wait too long, and they have to be ready to hit the ground running anytime. So they get the brief from the creative strategist and turn it into final ads. Then the entire creative department hops on a call to check for revisions to do, and once the revisions are done, the ads are ready to be launched. Repeat this process every week and you see your results improve exponentially. This is it for the creative department. You want to build your own. If you don't have all the roles that we talked about, you just look for them. I gave you all of the requirements that we usually look for. And in the next chapter, we will be talking about post-shooting recaps, why they're so important, why we should never forget about shooting recaps. It's gonna be a good one, and I'll see you there. Chapter 19, Post-Shooting Recap. Retrospection is hands down the most underrated activity anybody can do in any part of their career, in any industry, at any given time. I truly believe that introspection is a life hack, a career hack, a relationship hack, and an overall hack in general. Asking yourself, what could I have done better in this specific situation? Am I happy with the results I got? How can I get what I want next time? In this day and age, all the information you want to find is available out there. You just need to learn how to ask yourself the right questions. And this chapter is about creating a system around asking the right questions at the right time to both the creative department and the production crew. We call it the post-shooting recap, and it consists of 3 layers of retrospection. The retrospection for a production crew after the shooting, the videographer retrospection to the production crew, and the production crew and the creative department together. Putting this process in place allowed us to bring everything to the next level, and I would like you to implement this as soon as you can. This is going to allow you to only make mistakes once and actively find new solutions for your team to implement. So the first layer, as we just said, is the production crew post-shooting meeting. This is crucial, and as soon as talents leave the location, as soon as the crew gets back to the office, this meeting has to happen. We want everything to be clear in mind, and we don't want the team members to sleep on it and discuss everything the day after. You want them to focus exclusively on what can be improved, but also on what was good. Otherwise, it becomes a drag and they will hate this entire meeting. This meeting is where they focus on discussing everything that happened and whatever they sensed throughout the day. It can be a possible problem they didn't think about, something that has happened, or certain talents that for whatever reason were better or worse than expected. Discuss everything, and very important, leave some time to discuss internal team dynamics. Anybody didn't like something that somebody did? Please let it out. We want communication to be as clear as possible. Then the second one, it's more of a recap, but it's absolutely crucial for operations to run smoothly. When the videographer uploads all the files on the cloud media management system, we use Iconic, and it's good practice to take 10 minutes to walk the creative department through all the files, explaining whatever could be misinterpreted. It's nice to see the videographer and the production crew in general getting inspired during the shooting and adding scenes to the initial brief. If that happens, please ask your videographer to explain on the video how they expect those shots to be used. Same goes for the shots that for whatever reason are different from what was on the initial brief. Sometimes it happens, and hopefully for the better. Just make sure everything is thoroughly explained on the recap video.
Then finally, we have the meeting between the two departments, the production crew and the creative department. In this meeting, they discuss everything that happened at the shooting and ideally results from the previous one. We want the production crew to be able to understand why they are taking certain shots rather than others, and what to do to get the best results from a production standpoint. In this meeting, they also discussed the previous briefs, what was good about them, what could have been better and more clear, as well as in general the entire process, when they were submitted and so on. These meetings tend to be crucial for a good synergy between the two departments, and we want them to be scheduled ahead of time so every team member takes the time to attend them. For this last one, we usually recommend all the team members to come to the call with their points so that they can do the retrospection first and then share it with the rest of the team. Most of the time, turns out that multiple members were thinking about the same improvement but they didn't vocalize it. This is the best way, in my opinion, to make sure that your team keeps growing and learning as they work. In the next chapter, we will talk about view retention and how to make your videos sticky for the users. Let's go!